All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first order of business is bill introductions. Anyone have a bill introduction? You got any bills?
I'm letting you down, Ellen, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are. All right, then we'll go ahead and get right to business. I might go ahead before I forget, because I probably would if I waited till the end of it. There is a meeting tomorrow. Apparently, a WebEx may have gotten canceled inadvertently, so we are on for tomorrow and Thursday. We're off for Wednesday at this point, but always kind of keep a heads up, because if something comes up and we can plug something in, we will do that. So we are going to have a presentation today, folks, on the, as we refer to it, the MHIT bill, which is the Mental Health Intervention Team Program. And John, oh, there you are. I didn't see you when I came in. Welcome to committee, John Calvert. He's the Director of Safe and Secure Schools Unit, the Kansas Department of Education. Welcome to committee, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm sorry. Now we can hear. Yes? Cool. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and provide you an update on what this program has done over the last 6 years, and more specifically what it's done this school year. My name is John Calvert. I'm currently the Director of the Safe and Secure Schools Unit for the Kansas State Department of Education. And again, just very quickly, a brief overview. What is the Mental Health Intervention Team Program? It's a program that focuses on K-12 students and their families. We understand that mental health is not a one-off. It's not a one-person. We truly have to bring in the community, bring in the families, bring in these kids for it to be successful. So it focuses on the students and their families. Again, it's K through 12, and links them to the already existing mental health services that we have in our communities, whether that be through community mental health centers or through private providers. It focuses additional resources, and we've been tasked by the legislator to focus on foster care students. So we do work very closely with our foster contractors throughout the state. We provide trainings to our liaisons across the state with foster care and how we can better identify them and make sure that they're not slipping through the cracks. I would be remiss if I stand here today, 6 years into the program, and did not say that this was championed by Chairwoman Landwehr and the amazing things that the committees have done to support us and support those efforts in our schools. We want to make sure that this program helps break down those barriers that we as adults have inadvertently put up. And those barriers might be students having to take a half day, if not a full day, out of school to receive those sessions or the groups. Maybe the parents can't take a half a day off work, or the gas money it takes to get to those mental health facilities, whether it be private or community-based, and brings those services into the school. So our kids might get pulled out for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, an hour for a session, but they're right back into class. They're not pulled out for a complete day. The parents don't have to take time off work. The parents are notified. The parents understand what's going on. But it takes that drive time and that mileage and the money away, and it's breaking down those barriers so that they can receive services inside of our schools. And we've worked very, very hard. We've had several meetings and groups. We call them think tanks, about how we can better get this out, how we can formulate our reports, and we want to focus, and we need to focus and remember, and I have a wonderful staff who reminds me all the time, these are children, they are individuals. Each child, each student is going to be a little bit different. Their needs, their wants, their mental health is going to be a little bit different. So we really want to see kids as individuals, and we don't want to compare them to others. We don't want to, well, this child went through this and they needed this, so that's what you're going to get. It is not a cookie cutter program. We are wanting to make sure that we see each child as an individual, and we do not want to group them or compare them with other kids. They are people, and I put this in my testimony, but they are people first, and we want to make sure that we see that. As far as the monitoring, this is something that we've talked about every year, and for 6 years, the schools identify one or more of these areas of concerns, whether it be their academics, the child's attendance, or their internalizing or externalizing behavior. So we focus on those, and we want to track those behaviors or those things throughout the program. What do liaisons do? They are the bridge. I call them the center fielder. They are the ones playing traffic cop, and they are connecting everybody from here to there, whether it be parents, whether it be the school, whether it be the mental health professionals, whatever it may be, they are connecting, they are playing that traffic cop to make sure that everybody is on the same page, that the services that our children need, they are getting, and that everybody is made aware of what is going on. The communication that our schools have with our mental health providers is done by an MOU so that they can share that information. Most importantly, and more importantly, the parents have to agree to be in this program. The parents are made aware, the guardians are made aware of this program, and they are filled in on every step of the way by our liaisons. One of the liaisons' main duties is to breach that conversation, that first-time conversation with the parents or the guardians, to let them know what this program is all about and what we can do inside of our schools to help their child. The parent is not left out. The parent, if the parent agrees to be in the program, they sign a release, but at any time they can say, I want my child removed, and they honor that. If the parent refuses to sign a release, the child is referred, the parents and the families are referred to these services, but they are not entered into the mental health intervention team program because the parents haven't signed off on it. The next slide there says, what do liaisons do? Madam Chair, if it's something that I know about myself over the last 4 years of trying to explain this program, it's that I do a horrible job of encompassing everything that our liaisons do in our schools for our students and for these families. So I put a couple of bullet points there. They communicate this, the mental health program to the mental health providers. They communicate it to the schools and what services can be provided. They make the first contact, like I said earlier. They are that first contact with the parents, and especially in 2024, it's difficult sometimes for parents to hear what's going on in the mental health of their child. And so to breach that topic with the parents and to have that first conversation, they collect and send the referrals and connect, again, those mental health professionals to our schools, to our kids. They help families negotiate the barriers to treatment. Is it financial? Is it maybe it's a block that, oh my goodness, I didn't even know my child was on this radar or needed the mental health services that could be provided. So walking them through the entire program and the releases and the paperworks and the insurance that goes with it. And they communicate with the families to talk about, what are you seeing at home? How can we better help you as a mother, a father, a guardian, your family? How can we help you help this student? And how can we help this student help you? And so to have those kind of conversations and the communication between the guardians and the families with the students. And Madam Chair, again, I do a horrible job of explaining everything that goes on. So I brought 2 of my liaisons from across the state. They are here via Zoom. And Madam Chair, I leave it to you whether we need to take a break from me talking for a couple minutes and allow them to explain what liaisons do, or they can stand and be present for questions and explain after the presentation.
It's however you'd like to handle it, John.
Okay. I do have Erica Lysell and Jamie Malone. Erica, if you want to start for a couple minutes and inform the committee a little bit about what you guys do as liaisons.
Just make sure that you introduce yourself so that we have it on the record, please.
All right. Thank you, committee. My name is Erica Lysell, and I'm a licensed master level social worker. I work for USD 305 Salina Public Schools. And I think John actually did a great job at explaining a lot of what we do. There is, of course, a lot of detail in those kind of general statements. We do a lot of chasing, I would say sometimes. It's very hard to get parents their signatures and paperwork. They're in jobs, they're back and forth doing things. And so a lot of the times we are playing a chasing game, linking up with the parents to get paperwork signed. We had a student that was covered under insurance with her biological father. And I didn't know, I had never heard of this insurance, and it was not great. And they had maxed it out after a hospitalization. And we were able to get that student identified, teachers to fill out child behavior checklists, get the parental financial paperwork, and get that student on the SED waiver in less than a month's time so that she could get the therapy services she needed. And then in addition, those SED waiver services such as case management and wraparound facilitation. So that was wonderful because this young woman was struggling with an eating disorder that was tearing apart her daily life at school, and I would say also her home life. And so to be able to provide them with that link to insurance, I'm sure just in my time, because I was previously at the mental health center for 21 years, I saw many times things would slip between the cracks, parents wouldn't get paperwork done. So I think another term for us liaisons might be a cheerleader, and we just kind of cheer those parents on and get the things done and answer questions and provide reassurances, you name it. I think we have done it, or we'll probably do it in the near future. So that is a taste of what a day is like for us. Do you have any questions?
I think what we'll do, can you stay with us online?
Yes.
Okay, so I think when we get to the end of the full presentation, then we'll open it up to questions to the committee members.
Great. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jamie Malone also via Zoom, again, to just provide a different perspective on what liaisons do out there in the field.
Hello, my name is Jamie Malone. I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. I have been with USD 489 Hayes for my 5th school year now. I am located at the Hayes Middle School, where I'm the liaison for services for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I also came from the mental health center setting 5 years ago. I attend, well, in addition to what Erica described, I also attend our team meetings, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade team meetings. And I listen to the teachers, the school counselors, our school psychologists talk about our students. And everyone has a little bit of a different view. And when we put all of those situations together into one room and identify what's going on with a student or 6 students that day, we can determine that these students would benefit from mental health services here in the school. I have contacted parents with that information to share. This is what we're seeing in science. This is what we're seeing in math. When your child comes into school in the morning and goes to the gymnasium for the first 15 minutes, they're shutting down. They're not communicating with friends, and we're worried about them. And I have had numerous parents tell me, "Thank you. I did not know where to go. I didn't know what to do next. I knew my child needed something, but I didn't know where." And we are able to facilitate the collection of information from the teachers, from our counseling staff, from our principals, and from our parents. We get this all down in one location. We are able to schedule an intake or the initial assessment with the parent and the therapist here at the school. We are getting those intakes done, I think, sooner at the school than they can be done at the mental health center, simply because the therapists are here in the building on site, and we are able to manage their schedules. We know which student is going to be, we know which student needs to be seen when, because the therapist guides that. Treatment plan is generated, the treatment goals are established with the parents or families and the therapist, and that information is relayed to us. And then we schedule those students for therapy appointments in the school during the school day, like John said. And the beauty of not only reducing the number of hours the child is out of the building for services, we also reduce the need for students to be taken out of their core courses. We do not take students here in Hayes, we do not take students out of math, science, social studies, or language arts. We leave the students in those classes, those core classes, and we take them for their therapy sessions, whether they be 30, 45 minutes, out of the elective classes, such as PE, band, vocal, orchestra, art, communications. Of course, those are all important classes too, and we don't use the same class for every session. here in Hayes, we keep track of the elective classes they have missed and rotate those throughout the semester. It's a beautiful program. If a student is sick a day that they're scheduled, the therapist does not miss out on missed time for providing a service, because we can simply plug in the next student that needed to be seen and move on down the list. It's a wonderful program, and we support it, and we are very appreciative of your support. The committee are very, very appreciative and hope that you continue to support our program. I also just need to take one quick second to say the reporting mechanism and the application process makes this program very easy to enter and report on. It's not a laborious process, and we really appreciate that. I'll be here for questions as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. And again, members of the committee, I appreciate the time to listen to that. They do a much better job than I could ever do, but I can tell you that those are two of about 185 liaisons that I could put in front of you, and I hope you hear the passion that they all would have, because they are truly out there doing what they want to do that's best for kids. The question of funding always comes up, and this is in a proviso bill, has been for the last 6 years. So every year we're getting the funding, and we appreciate that, both from this committee and from the entire legislature, to continue to provide that funding. The way it has been since 2018 is that 75% of the grant funds go to the liaison's salary and fringe benefits. The school district then provides and makes up for the remaining 25%. There's also 25% of that request, or a third of that 75% that goes to the districts as flow-through money from the grant through the school to the mental health provider or providers that are seeing students. For a real-world example, districts that apply for a $50,000 grant for the liaison, their salary and their fringe benefits, the district would receive $37,500. The school district would then match the remaining $12,500 to fully fund that position. The district would then receive $12,500 split into quarterly payments, or $3,125 quarterly, as flow-through money, again, from the grant through the school to the mental health provider or providers. This all started in 2018-2019 school year. It started with our 9 pilot districts, and I will be honest, 3 of these districts are some of the largest districts in the state of Kansas. So it was a tremendous upbringing, and it was, again, because of the champions in this room and because of our amazing liaisons in school districts. They piloted then with the community mental health centers. In that first year in 2018-2019, we funded 45 liaisons. There were 212 foster students served in that very first year, and a total of 1,708 students were served that very first school year. If we fast forward, now we're into year 6. These numbers are going to be from July 1, 2023 to December 20th, 2023. So just that first semester of school, and we are currently in 90 school districts. We have 182 liaisons. And again, as of December 20th of 2023, we have served 5,732 students total in that one semester of schooling. Now, there's a lot of data that's been pushed out pre-pandemic about on average 1 in 13 of our Kansas, or I'm sorry, nationally, 1 in 13 of our children will attempt suicide. Not think about, talk about, have a plan, post about, but physically actually attempt. If we take those numbers, those 1 in 13, and we apply it to 5,732, statistically speaking, we have reached almost 450 kiddos just from that stat. Now, we know that 5,732 students who are saying that they need mental health services, that number is probably larger than 450. But I'm going to tell you that 450 kids is worth every single penny that we're spending. There's nothing more important than our kids' lives. Of those 5,732, this semester alone, we have also served 477 foster care students, or students who are in the foster care system. And that I am blown away by those numbers and by the amazing work that our liaisons in our school districts and our mental health providers are contributing. Those are individualized Kansas kids that are getting the help and the support that they need. And the families have wrapped around it and are seeing the improvement. Some of the things that I like to consider, especially when I'm talking to our group and that they have to remind me, is that some students may still receive mental health services outside of this program, and that's okay. Some students may have a relationship with a therapist already. Some students may have transferred in and have that outreach. That's fantastic. And while it may not count towards these numbers, I'm so happy that they have a trusted person in their lives that they can go and get these services from. Some students and families might not want to participate in the mental health intervention team program, and that's okay too. Like I said earlier, the information is already passed on to the parents to say, hey, listen, we understand. If at any time you change your mind, we're here. If you want to seek out this treatment by yourself on your own, please do, but know that the liaisons and the mental health providers are here to help in any way possible, whether it's with this program or not. We also heard from 2 liaisons, and it's important to understand that every program has to be a little bit different depending on the school and the community that we work in and the kiddos themselves. No 2 kids are going to be the same. They are truly individuals, and so we have to make sure that this program is flexible enough to make sure that we fill the needs that our kids need. And we must trust those professionals, whether it be the parents or the guardians, whether it be the mental health professionals, the liaisons, to make those choices and to communicate with each other to do what is best for that individual student. I am in charge of school safety for all 286 school districts here in the state of Kansas. I have a very heavy job. I love this program because whenever I am having a really bad day, I go to the success stories. And when we are normalizing mental health and normalizing asking for help, not only from peers and parents, but when I hear success stories that say teachers are so used to looking for kids, we're not seeing the loudest kid, but we're also able to focus on the kids who may be trying to fly under the radar. When I have success stories that tell me that, hey, this kiddo was in our mental health services and they went to their friend and said, hey, this is really helping me. Maybe you should get in it. Let me take you over here to the counselor, to the liaison. Let's talk to your parents because it's doing wonders for me. Kids are referring their friends. And we know if we take a step back, and what I've known my second, third year as a school resource officer is that once kids reach a certain age, they're not coming to adults, right? I have a 12-year-old daughter who one night said, I love you, Daddy, you're the best thing ever, and woke up the next morning and her head was spinning around, right? What are you doing, Dad? And I embarrass her now anytime I even say hi. She doesn't come to me like I would like her to. She goes to her peers. So the fact that her peers are going to be able to pull her into this program if needed. We have superintendents who are calling me, hey, we didn't get into this program, but this district over here is in the program, and they're saying it's doing amazing things for the climate and culture in their buildings. I want to get in this program. How do I do that? I have had at least 10 school districts this year contact me, say, hey, I want to get in this program next year. Keep me informed. Let me know, what is this all about? How do I get involved? Districts are talking, parents are talking, kids are talking, teachers and staff are talking. We've had staff and superintendents go from a district that has it to a district that doesn't, and then says, hey, my other district has this program. This is amazing. We need to do some research and get it in here. It is doing fantastic things. I love one of the success stories that I put in here. The student is displaying a decrease in agitation, attention-seeking behaviors, manipulation, lack of self-control, and other disruptive behaviors. These major improvements in externalizing behaviors are occurring despite the student having an adoptive placement disruption where she returned to living in a group home. The student made the honor roll for the first time in her academic career. This serves as a safe place for our kids where they can have some sort of sense of normalcy. And I'm sorry that I get emotional, and I'm sorry that I get jacked up because this program is amazing. It's saving kids' lives. And the last point that I will make, because I always get this feedback every single time I ask for it, and it's why this program is worth every penny. If it saves one child, it's worth it. and for a student to have the voice to go to their therapist, to go to their counselor, to go to an adult and say, my therapist saved my life. I love it. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you about this program, to share my passion, to share the amazing things that our liaisons and that our school districts and that our mental health providers are doing across the state of Kansas to help our kids. Thank you to this committee. Thank you to Madam Chair for championing this for 6 straight years. And with that, I will stand for questions.
John, I don't ever want to hear you apologize for the emotions and the empathy, because I guarantee you, I certainly don't, because it's all about the kids.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that as they grow up, then we save a lot of other problems in their lives as an adult. Okay, committee, we will take questions at this time. I have Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Calvert. So, and I probably not going to match your enthusiasm. I apologize. I'm trying. So what I'm channeling a conversation I had last session with a social worker in one of my school districts. And she was talking about the lack of resources that she had in her district. In fact, it was the district my kids went to. What I don't understand, and maybe you can help fill in the blanks a little bit, is how does this program interface with the staff that would be considered the social workers in this school district? So is there crosswalk, crosstalk, or how do you, is there even like a mutual aid, mutual support? And I didn't get that from the presentation unless I missed it.
Absolutely, and I apologize, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, this is a team thing, right? I think it was Jamie who talked about, she sits in on those meetings where we have the social workers and the counselors and the teachers, and it's truly a wraparound that we're trying to get all voices heard. And it's just another opportunity for voices to be heard. So yes, there's definitely crosstalk. Yes, there's meetings. Yes, there's kids being brought to different groups in hopes that we can get them services.
So if I may follow up?
I think, John, where he was coming from, and correct me if I'm wrong, Representative Bueller, is that you have a school that may not be a participant in the MHIT program.
Yes.
And so your question is, how does your social worker, and is there a crosswalk to the MHIT program? And my response to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, there is not one. The school districts have the opportunity to apply for this program every year. It's limited on whatever funds gets allocated. The governor did add another $3 million this year into her budget. And so, of course, the ones that are currently in the program get priority, and then any new ones get put on the list after that. The liaisons are funded by building, except in some of the small districts where they may have 2 or 3 towns that are sharing one because they just travel because they don't need a full one there all the time, but it's by building. So we talk about having X number of districts, but that doesn't mean every building in that district has the program. It just means certain buildings within the district. Does that help?
That helps. And then, so assuming there's the application process, there is that interoperability, I guess, between the school staff that's there. Okay, so it's kind of a 2-step process. Or the school district has to apply, and then, and I apologize for I'm trying to walk the dog on this. So if the school counselor knows of a student that has some need of assistance, can that school counselor or social worker reach out to you guys, or how does that process work?
So right now, the way it's in place, without the program, that counselor or social worker would reach out to the families or to the mental health providers at that point and try and get the student enrolled or in therapy. With the mental health intervention team program, they would talk to and have meetings with that liaison, and the liaison then kind of takes over that role to help connect and, again, be that traffic cop to connect everyone together. And with the MHIT program, services are inside of the school. Without the MHIT program, those services, they may have to drive 30, 45 minutes to that mental health provider.
Okay.
And I hope that answers your
It
question.
does. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
And Representative, it's actually one of the reasons that the program came about was in visiting with these professionals within the school building. As I met with a elementary school in my district, as I spent time with the social worker after the tour, I kept hearing the word disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. School's out, no services. School's in, services. Weekend, no services. Midnight, meltdown, no services. Or they're looking at, trying to find someone else to build a relationship. So that's how it came about. Does that help? Okay. Representative Epley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, John, really thanks for being here, and I'm really impressed with your energy and enthusiasm, and sounds like you enjoy getting up every day and going to work.
I sure do, absolutely.
So having said that, having seen this start at the ground level, I've been here just that long. I remember when it started and seen its growth and the way it's been received. And, it is a highly sought after service available in many of our school districts. I think probably eventually most of them. I think it's going to continue to expand in its scope and what it provides. Not trying to steal your talk, but I think that's going to happen. We see it happening. I guess I'm coming at this from a standpoint of financial sustainability, and having been here just long enough to see the bad times and now better times financially, I know how things can go by the way of the financial axe depending on the year, and seen a lot of health services cut, seen a lot of health services put back in place. This is a newer version of mental health that is, I think, amazing for access and what it's accomplishing, and you outlined that nicely. My question finally is, should this reside under the model of the CCBHCs so that there is financial sustainability and support going forward, and since they're going to be throughout the state, or should we continue to see and hope that we continue to look favorably by the governor's budget and by the funding committees in the state, because I worry about that model going forward. If you can comment about that.
Sure. And I'm going to try and restate your question as I understand it. Are you asking about should we continue to fund the way it is with just the CCBHCs, or should we allow mental health, the private providers in as well? Or are you asking just the funding formula?
Well, the MHIT program, as I understand it, is freestanding through appropriations and through the governor's, and now this year with more money through the governor's budget. But if it were part of the CCBHC model, would that be better for financial stability and sustainability?
I think, and again, if I'm answering the wrong question, I apologize, Madam Chair, members of the committee. What I believe is that when we talk about schools and we talk about kids, KSDE is a great place as far as being able to have the schools comfortable with us and comfortable with everything else. Personally, if kids are getting services, kids are getting services. And if kids are being saved, then kids are being saved. And I will stand and put my personal beliefs over to one side. As far as changing or doing things, that's for KSD leadership to decide and to comment on. But I want kids, I want this program to be about kids. I want it focused on kids and doing what's best for kids. Everything else, that's your guys' job. I serve at the pleasure of the legislator, so I appreciate it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's just kind of futuristic, and I appreciate the fact that you're so passionate about it, and we hope that we can continue the funding going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I think to kind of tag along with that is the program is open to other providers besides CCBHCs or CMHCs. They have to be able to provide the same type of services. And that means 24/7 crisis services. We actually had a district that somehow a organization slipped in, was not providing the 24/7 crisis services. They were handing out the CCBHC's card for those services without an MOU between them. So if you can't provide all the services, then you don't get to participate in this program. The other thing to keep in mind is that for school districts to bill Medicaid, it's a very small number. So in this program, the CCBHCs or other private providers, assuming that they're set up to bill Medicaid, is they can bill the Medicaid CHIP program, they can bill private insurance, and then they also have to take at no cost to kids that have no insurance. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And by law, CCBHCs do have to take everyone, just like an ER does. But if you want to be in this program, you will take a kid irregardless of the ability to pay. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Next, I have Representative Berquist.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, sir. Appreciate your passion. That comes without saying, because it's kind of hard for you to contain yourself when you're sharing, and that's genuine. And I've probably heard this answer before, but do you work directly with DCF in cases where a kid's already in some sort of a crisis management family-wise? And are you involved in clinical diagnosis of conditions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. First, our liaisons operate off what their licensure is for. Per the requirement in the statute, our liaisons have to have a bachelor's degree in something. It does not necessarily have to be social work or mental health. So they stick to what that is. They're not going to, I would say a vast majority of them are not going to get into the clinical diagnoses. That would be left up to the mental health providers, whether it be private or CMHCs, CCBHCs. So I hope that answers that question. As far as, and I should have written down your first question, I'm sorry.
As far as engagement with current situations that are being dealt with at DCF and such.
So whatever information is provided to the school at the time of enrollment, or if something were to happen, if that information is shared with the mental health provider or with the schools, there is that MOU and contract in place that they can share that with our liaisons. And again, we focus on those kiddos who may be in the foster care system so that we can take a deeper dive into what's going on. Maybe they have a therapist or a group worker that they're working with, and we can continue to support them in that. Maybe they don't, and we can support them by getting them into the program with the guardian's DCF or the parent's permission as well.
Very good. Thank you, sir, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, and Representative Berquist, keep in mind that the liaisons are not diagnosing or providing treatment. It's the professionals with the CMHC or the other licensed entity.
Good.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you break down the language barriers, both for students and for parents?
Sure. So mental health, a lot of times, right, wrong, or indifferent in 2024 is a very difficult barrier to cross as is. If maybe the child is an English language learner, so we can get the transition going on there. We can get the translators to help. We can have parents come in and we can, again, just round table all of that. But the largest barrier is normalizing that mental health. And what we're finding throughout the state is that once we have a kiddo or two who's in the program and they are championing that for their peers, it's a lot better for their friends to come in. As far as the language barriers, we would work with the translators and we would work with the services that are already in place a lot of times inside the school. Thank you.
Representative Burkamp.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just to clarify mine, so this program is just putting liaisons in schools to then refer these kids to professional providers, correct?
Yes, Representative.
Okay, so then just to follow up, what would be the incremental cost just to put a mental health therapist in the school instead of having a liaison? Because it looks like you're spending about $55,000 per person. So I guess what would that additional cost be just to have that professional there as opposed to having a middle person?
Sure. I don't think it's necessarily a cost issue, if I can speak kind of personally. The very first year the program was established, they required a social work license. And what ended up happening is that we didn't have the people across the state to fill those positions. So if it's a cost base or if it's a personnel issue, I think I would lean more towards a personnel issue. I don't know what these licensed therapists or case managers would make and how that would affect coming into the school, and whether that be 60,000, 65,000, what those numbers would be to just have the professionals. But I would caution, just because we've learned from previous years, that it's not necessarily a cost, it's a manpower issue.
I agree with that, and that was my first question before I realized that they're not the therapists in the schools, the liaisons. But I didn't know if like for 259 or the bigger ones, but you answered my question, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative.
Representing Burkamp, the other issue that you would have if you wanted to put a licensed counselor of sort, clinical individual in there, would be, then it would be subject to school hours, so it defeats the purpose. Then it's not 24/7. So guess when the kids have their meltdowns? Midnight, Saturday night. Where do they go? 911 gets a call, or today we got 988. May end up in one of our juvenile facilities. So that's the reason that we don't pay the high level to have a counselor, a clinical person in there, is because it wouldn't be 24/7 services. And these kids have got to have availability 24/7. Does that make sense?
I agree to a degree, but I wasn't sure if 90% of their issues could be covered during session, like in school, and then obviously you're going to have issues outside, but I wasn't sure if the biggest hurdle was just working with them through, I know it's going to be after hours, but if it's more just bringing them along, I can talk to you offline after. I understand what you're saying, but I'm
Well,
looking
no, I
at it from
think if you've got questions, I'm sure that other people do too, so that's why we should have it.
Well, I mean, I think that if a kid's going through these issues, that if they're able to see a therapist, whether it's, at school or professionally, I'm just wondering, if you could kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, instead of having to go outside of school. I know certain schools that have hired therapists in-house, and it seems to have been a good addition, but.
Well, they've hired him. And then when that kid has a meltdown on Saturday night at midnight, where do they go?
Well,
That counselor's not available from that school.
No, I agree. It's more, yeah, again, I understand what you're saying, so.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
because that therapist or someone with that organization has to be available. That's where the 24/7 crisis intervention services have to be in place from that organization that's contracting, whether it's their CCBHCs or it's another entity. 24/7 crisis interventions. And that's probably the most crucial times, is when a child has, we call them meltdowns, and I kind of hate that terminology, but that's literally what it is, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
The child's lost control, the parents can't control them, they don't know what to do, and then they're on the phone to, like I said, 911 or 988.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know that, life situations occur all the time, but sometimes maybe half the situations arise at school because of stress from tests or from, from school-related issues, but there are definitely personal issues too. So I'm with you where you're coming from. So thank you.
Representative Barth.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lammer, and thank you, John. My question is around either the liaison or the school district themselves. Are they 100% required to notify and work with the parent and/or the foster parent in order to be able to bring in the community services and get their permission? Is that 100% of the time? Does that happen? And can you tell us a little bit about how that all works? And then not just them, but then the ongoing maybe needs that they have? Thanks.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the question. Absolutely. As I stated, the conversations and the things that take place require a waiver to be signed by those parents and guardians to even come into the program. So our liaisons are having that conversation with the parents, the guardians, and saying, hey, these are some services. Your child's been identified. This is what we can do. We want to help. We want to do all of these things. If the parents say yes and sign that waiver, we can get them in. And the communication doesn't stop there. The communication continues because we want to make sure that, hey, what we're doing, what we're seeing inside the school, what are you seeing at home? What is going on at home, and how can we better support you and the family and this child inside the home? The only way to get that is by talking to the parents, the guardians. And so, yes, that continues to happen both prior to being enrolled in this MHIT program and then ongoing as well. And again, as I stated, sometimes parents aren't wanting to enroll in this program. That's fine. We still provide them the information to not only this program, but to their local mental health providers, whether it be public or private. And we've had parents who say, no, 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 no. And then weeks, months later come back and say, hey, I really am seeing some disturbing things at my house. I need help. And we say, hey, we have this, and it's about that established communication and relationship that we have with the families, because again, it's not a one-off approach, it's not a child. This is a community, a family that we want to get in and bring in and help. We have programs who provide the therapy and the case management inside the school, and then once every 4th or 5th session, or maybe the parents say, hey, we need help, they'll bring the parents and the families in and have that therapy session with the families there. And again, do a family-wide session, if you will. Because again, it's not about alienating the child, it's about understanding that they are a part of a group and a part of a family, and we want to make sure that we help the whole child. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my first time hearing this, so this is wonderful to have this presentation today. I just wanted to clarify, so this is for every child in every school district with additional focus on foster kids if needed or additional resources, is that correct?
Minor tweak, it's kindergarten through 12th grade students of any district that is enrolled in this program. So right now we have 90 districts that have enrolled. We've been blessed. We have been fully funded every single year. And I don't think I mentioned that, Madam Chair, but every single district that has applied has received the monies that they have requested up to this point through year 6. So if the school is enrolled in this program, then yes, kindergarten through 12th grade can and will receive services through this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, to your point about the 24/7, where I live, several school districts are involved in western Kansas, but this CCBHC or Compass Mental Health is the crisis respondent. So if the FQHC has money, I assume you're not going to turn that down. Do they just have an MOU that the mental health center will cover them 24/7?
So that would be on each individual private provider I'm going to say it wrong. Any private provider, any provider outside of that CMHC, CCBHC would have the MOUs with each other and with the school as well, so that they can share and communicate. As Madam Chair has said, it is that 24/7 care that we are after. We understand that sometimes crises happen and we may have to pass off once, but the purpose of this program is that at 2:00 a.m. on a Saturday, we are getting that child some sort of help.
And I assume the parents know that if they call the school, they're going to get a recording. So they're calling the community mental health center, or who are they calling?
They would connect with that private provider or the mental health provider, whether that be public or private. They would connect with them at one of the very first meetings. There's a lot of paperwork and waivers and things that have to be gone through, and they have that contact information for crises lines or personal phones so that they can get in contact with the correct person, because you're absolutely right. At 2 a.m. on a Saturday, I don't think we have anybody at the schools answering the phones.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for presenting it. It sounds like you're doing God's work. I mean, this is a very, very needed thing. And I was very impressed. You said some children have said something like, "You saved my life." My first question, if I could maybe do two, and I may have missed this, you may have already mentioned it, but are there metrics, the incidence of suicide attempt, the incidence of self-harm or encounter with the law, are there any metrics, statistics that can reinforce this when it comes funding time and so forth, or have I just missed it?
So we kind of view it on a 30,000-foot view. We break it down into internalizing behavior and externalizing behavior. And so whether those are the outbursts, whether that's the cutting, whether that's the suicidal ideations, those would fall into those two categories. We don't break it down to exactly, because our liaisons might not be there for that kind of conversation, and that's up to the therapists and the people involved in that kind of realm.
Representative Bryce, maybe what you're asking, I'm making assumptions here, and I know better to do assumptions, but I do that anyway, is that we do have a quarterly report that is issued. We have an online database that information is put in to track each and every one of these kids. They are tracked with their school number. The thing we like about that is if they move from one place to another, we can keep them in continuous contact with the program if they go to another school that has this program. So maybe that's something, John, we need to get is a copy of the report, the most recent report for the committee members to look at the stats, because we're looking at, and I don't remember what's all on that, but you know, how many absenteeisms, how many disruptions in class, how many tardies into class.
Right.
How's their academics improving? Disruption into class. Like I said, I don't know what, I think it was like 12, 13 items that we
So it's
track on the
broken down
database.
into four: improved attendance, improved academics, internalizing behavior, and externalizing behavior.
Yeah, but we've got individual things within that.
The things that we track for the quarter or for the report are just those four things. In the portal, it might be a little bit different, but the four main things and the four things that we include on that report are those four topics.
Well,
If you'd like to see it broken down even further, that's something that we can look into, and I'm sure that we have. It's just not on that report.
Well, then the report's changed.
Okay?
So I guess we need to take a look at that. But that's the thing that's important. And then, you know, have the kids graduated from the program? Did they drop out of the program? We have all of those types of stats.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Just one other quick question. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but something Representative Barth mentioned, Madam Chair. Maybe this is very rare, but you had mentioned the parents are always part of the decision-making process. I keep coming back to, well, what about an emancipated minor or a child who's been declared a mature minor by a health care provider? Or maybe this has just never happened, but are there instances where the parents may not be involved? Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Representative, I would have to get back to you on that. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would have involved in, but as long as the parents have legal rights to that child, they would be involved in that process. If the rights were removed for any reason, somebody is still involved, whether that be the state, DCF, whatever custody that child would be in, that's who would be involved. As far as emancipated minors, where they would be in charge of themselves, I don't think we've run into that. I would have to do some digging into how that's been handled, and I can get that answer back to you.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Representative Haswood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I understand correctly that you guys are bridging these students to mental health providers, how are the mental health providers being selected? Are they prioritized for in-person or virtually? And I saw in your report, too, that you guys are kind of looks like struggling a bit when you connect with the mental health provider, making sure that that student is showing up for session, or maybe the parents can't take off time for work to be there to take the student to the mental health provider. Yeah, can you give me more insight into that?
Sure. And yes, those are the last statement you made. That's the barriers that we're breaking down, right? The gas, the time off work, the time out of school. Bringing those sessions and the therapy and the group into the school helps break down a lot of those barriers. And that's why this is so important. As far as who the school partners with, that's up to each individual school. A lot of them have already established relationships with the community mental health centers or a private provider that they wish to partner with. That is totally left up to each individual school district, because we know that is going to be different from district to district or building to building. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're putting into the school is comfortable with it, so that the students can be comfortable as well. But as far as those barriers, the parents are involved, they sign the waivers, they sign the release, and then we're able to bring those therapy sessions and the group and the case management into the school. So the kiddo is not having to take time away from school. The parents are not having to take time off work and gas money and driving 30, 45, an hour away to the therapy. It is inside the school. There are times where they have to go and do a virtual meeting for one reason or another. But again, that child is brought out of the classroom, and they are taking that therapy, that group, that case management virtually, and then they're right back into the classroom. They're not having to leave the school. But the goal is, and what we want, is to have somebody in that school so that they can have those sessions in person inside the school. That's what the program is all about.
Thank you for clarifying. And if I have one more question, Madam Chair. So this is free to families, correct?
Yes, the insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, you heard them talk about the SED waivers, the uninsured, underinsured. we're taking everybody. It's not about finances by any means.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Representative Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Say, my question is about data. You know, folks are worried about who owns it, who has access to it. So this is a relationship where the school acts as the liaison, but the actual provider of the service is the mental health professional. So when you talked about those categories of data, I guess the question is, who owns that? Is that the actual provider? But then the chairwoman's question said that it's tracked such that if they go to another school, that you know, I don't know how much you know. Do you know just that they've been in the program, or do you actually have the whole data set? So that's the question.
Thank you, Representative. Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, that's through that MOU between the school district and the mental health provider. They are talking constantly as well and sharing information back and forth between the students. The liaisons have a portal that they can enter all those data points in, as the chair mentioned. And so if they're having the discussions about, hey, this child right here is we're seeing really good attendance. The therapist might not know the attendance, but the liaison has access to the attendance, right? So they're able to put that information in. But the therapist says, hey, we're focused on internalizing behavior, and this is what we're seeing. The liaison talks to the teachers and talks to staff and says, hey, what are you guys seeing? Are they still being a disruption? Are they able to calm themselves? Are they able to use their voice and say, hey, I just need a timeout for like 5 minutes? And they enter those points into the portal. The portal helps track all of that through the KIDS system, through that student ID number. So if Johnny moves from school A to school B and starts the program back up, all of those data sets go with him and are able to be tracked from the second school. And again, the liaisons are talking constantly with each other. Hey, I saw this kiddo was coming from your school. Tell me about that. What is it that we can do to help? What is it that I need to let this mental health provider know? Or are we close enough to where they can come over and we can keep that same therapist, that same person, so that there's some continuity there? And so it's a lot of talking, a lot of things going on, but that portal acts as something for our liaisons to help keep track of everything, and then they submit that report based off that kind of information. And that is housed, I'm sorry, that would be housed with KSDE.
Oh, there's the answer. So all of that data that you talked about, like, you know, he's missing class, I mean, those are school records that you're saying are being shared with the mental health person. But how about the diagnosis, treatment, those kinds of things that are specific to that client-patient relationship? Where do those go?
Sure, that would be housed with the mental health provider. I don't see that. We don't report that. We just say, these are the kiddos. This is what we're tracking. We don't see any of that diagnosis.
Okay, that's really the crux of my question.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Right, and the database is an online database, and if I recall correctly, the liaison is responsible for all of the input. So no one else has access to that. Committee, are there any further questions? John, I've got a couple. Do we have any stats on how much family services we were providing after school? Because this is supposed to be a true wraparound program, and it's been really helpful, especially in our small communities, when a person can show up at the school building instead of the CMHC and nobody in that little small town knows that they went to see a mental health provider. Because sometimes we may find out that Johnny's having problems at school because a family member died, mom or dad lost their job, you know, different types of things. And it might be that the family itself needs some services and they may qualify with the CMHC, or the CMHCs can direct them where to get services.
Absolutely. At current point, we're not tracking those after hours weekend visits. I can tell you that there are a lot of districts who open up their doors during the summer and during spring break, and during those hours where it may be that 7 to 4 school hours, but they're opening them up during break so that these services can continue inside of the school. There are districts that will have iPads that they can take, and the child can use the iPad and do virtually outside of those school hours. And so we know that this program is truly that wraparound 24/7. We don't have any specific stats on how many times that has happened, but that is something that I can go back and ask for and see if we can track that.
Because early on, we actually had, you know, quite a few programs that the school buildings were staying open until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So, and then also, and I have not asked this one here in a while, but on occasion, it may not just be individual one-on-one therapy. It could actually be some group therapy that occurs. And again, remember, this all happens in the school building. So the child doesn't have to leave. Mom and dad doesn't have to come up and take the child out. Because as you heard John talk about earlier, what will happen is the mom or dad comes and picks up the child, they go to the therapist, they wait to get into the therapist, then it takes an hour for the therapy, and then they say, hey, there's only 2 hours left of the school day, let's just don't go back. Well, guess what? That child probably lost 3 to 4 hours of school. Now they don't lose that because they're right there in the building. Representative Gardner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Calvert, for the presentation. I'd like just a little clarification here as I'm trying to put the pieces together. You know, I'm making one assumption is that with mental health or behavioral science things, that early intervention is one of the keys to success. And that would appear to me to be one reason that this program has enjoyed the high level of success that you reported, and I'm glad you're reporting that to us, because we have these liaisons in the school that monitoring these indicators of concern that, you know, get people to services in a timely manner. But it also appears to me that, you know, one of the key elements of long-term success is proper monitoring and or of these patients. And we all know that school ends at some point for every student. So how, and you know, at that point, then these liaisons, I assume, go away. And of course, in the summertime also. How does this program deal with that, all of a sudden, this gap that there isn't a liaison anymore, monitoring indicators of concern or acting as a facilitator to get services to people that need it? And you know, have you looked at any data what the success rate is after school with these people?
Absolutely. Representative, Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for your question. First, success is hard to track. Every child, again, I asked that to our liaisons, how are we tracking this? How are we monitoring success? Success is different for every single kiddo. You know, making it through first hour is a success for some kids. Making it through 7th grade might be a success. Making it through the weekend might be a success. So it's hard to track true success with this program and with mental health as a whole. I can tell you that we have districts and we have liaisons that don't stop because it's summer. COVID was a fantastic example. We had liaisons going door to door on the front lawns of the parents' house, talking to kids, how are you doing, what do you need, talking to parents and to the guardians saying, hey, what is it that we need? Opening the schools up, again, like we said, opening the schools up during summer or during spring break or after hours to continue this success. This is not a 9-month and you're done program. Now, there are families, there are children who opt and say, listen, we're going to take the summer, and they can choose to come back and re-enroll, or they know that the option is there. As far as aging out through that K through 12, once you're 17, 18 years old and you graduate high school, yes, that program ends at that point. Our hope and that our belief is that they've established a good enough relationship and rapport with their therapist or with a trusted adult that they can, if they want to, they can continue this to get therapy and they can continue to get case management and group. It doesn't have to end just because you end school. The therapy and the relationships that you've built while you've been in this program can continue. While it may not be tracked via this program, the services can and will continue. Thank you, Representative.
Representative Gardner, a lot of times that's the relationship that's built with the individual actually providing the services, so the family and the kids know how to contact them directly. And as he mentioned, during COVID, these kids were getting services when other kids weren't. Committee, are there further questions? All right, seeing none, I appreciate you being here today, John. I'll look forward to you if you'll get us why don't you take and give us maybe 2 or 3 years of that report so we can kind of look at the history and how we've improved. I did have something is with our liaisons that are online, do you have anything that you would like to add at this time or interject with?
This is Jamie Malone. I'd like to add something that goes way back to the very beginning of the establishment of the program that you were involved with, Madam Chairperson. We realized years ago that there are simply just not enough providers to go around in the state of Kansas. And to put a social worker in every school district or every school building to provide mental health services, psychotherapy was something we could not do. Not only was the manpower not there, but the resources, the money wasn't there either. And the Association of Community Mental Health Centers had a statewide border-to-border system already in place for outpatient and some inpatient care in the state of Kansas. And so the partnership came together because the schools had the students, the mental health centers had the providers. It was a perfect partnership, and it continues to work very well.
Thank you for that.
Madam
Anything else
Chair,
you want
and
to
members
add?
of the, oh, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair and members of the committee, I also just want to reiterate, in hearing John Calvert and what he said, that his attitude about the program and his energy that he brings to it, it does affect every liaison in every school. We have monthly state meetings by Zoom, and you can just, his presence brings that. And the care that he shows for each school district, for each student that he's never even met face to face, it does filter down to us liaisons, and that we are just providing the best care that we can and trying to ensure that every student gets the resources and the help that they need and that they deserve.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. And I think one of the things that the committee needs to understand is that the schools would not be able to do the level of counseling that we're doing here. And keep in mind that the dollars that you see from the SGF side is not the only dollars that this program costs. We're billing Medicaid. So there's that 60-40. So it actually ends up saving money for our school districts in order for these kids to not only get more services, but be able to actually provide the services. We were not providing the services before that at all. We didn't have the capacity to do it, and we didn't have the workforce to do it. And what the school districts could bill on Medicaid is a very small amount compared to what can be billed outside of this. You also have the ability to bill private insurance, and then, like I said, any organization that provides these services has to take these children irregardless of the ability to pay. So a little bit of that SGF is built in to pay for a very, very small amount of the uncompensated care, if that helps a little bit. Committee, are there any further questions? I'm going to put somebody on the spot if he's still out there. Yep, Kyle, I see you hiding back there. Kyle Kessler with the CMHC Association. Is there anything that you would like to add because you were in on the very beginning with all of this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kyle Kessler, Executive Director at the Association of Community Mental Health Centers. I think John did an outstanding job with his presentation. I mean, it would be nice if he could show a little enthusiasm for it, but maybe he can work on that.
Did you notice the lack of that?
It was just, hang with it. He'll get there, I'm confident. But really, the partnership, I think, and Jamie Malone, who's been around our system prior to going to work for the school, who you heard from as well, did a wonderful job, and her service to the system around the state has been substantial. I think that component of connecting, and the partnership piece was incredibly important, and then recognizing that to pull from one workforce, weaken the system both from the education standpoint as well as the behavioral health standpoint. And so that's benefited families and communities around the state quite well. So I appreciate the opportunity to work on it. And oftentimes when you work on things in the policy setting in this building, unintended consequences turn good intentions to something different, but this has done very much what it was supposed to do.
All right, thank you. Has anyone got questions of Kyle? Someone's got to have one just to harass him, but no. Kyle, thank you very much for letting me put you on the spot. And Representative Gardner, kind of going back to your question of what happens, when they basically, get out of school, hopefully they've built that relationship with the mental health provider that they've been working with, so that can be ongoing. You don't need a liaison to do that later on. So, all right, committee, seeing no further questions, that ends our discussions here today. And again, like I said earlier, we do have a meeting tomorrow, irregardless of what you may have seen on the internet, because we know that everything we see on the internet is not true. So we are adjourned until 1:30 tomorrow.